Okay, so today we're going to look at AI in a totally new way. I want you to forget, just for a moment, about smarter chatbots or better tools. We're going to explore this really wild idea that AI is actually on an evolutionary path to becoming a new kind of life. Yeah, let's get right into it.
Look, we've all played with ChatGPT, right? We know large language models are amazing, they're incredibly powerful, but they've also got some pretty serious limits. So the big question we're really digging into today is what's next? What's the next step on the ladder?
And this is where the core idea really kicks in. Instead of looking at different AI technologies as, separate things competing with each other, we're going to frame them as stages in one single unfolding story. Think of it less like horses versus airplanes and more like gills evolving into lungs, one thing becoming the next.
All right, so let's start with what we know, right? The here and now. We are in the age of prediction, and this age is completely dominated by the tech we're all talking about, the large language model, or LLM.
So the real magic trick behind an LLM is this thing called semantic compression. It's not just about storing tons of data. It's about taking basically all of human language and thought from the internet and squeezing it, condensing it down into a system that can then predict what word comes next with this absolutely startling fluency.
And I love this metaphor from our source. Think of an LLM like a fossil. It's not alive, right? But it holds this perfect, crystallized impression of life, a history of how we humans talk and think and argue. It's shaped by life, but it isn't life itself. And that, right there, is where its biggest problem starts.
See, just predicting stuff is incredibly powerful, but it's also really brittle. It has a hard limit, and that limit is exactly why these models hallucinate, or, to put it more simply, why they just make stuff up.
So here's the crucial part. An LLM's only job, its only goal, is to give you the answer that is most statistically likely. It has zero concept of truth. It has no anchor in reality. It literally doesn't care if what it says would actually work or if it even makes sense in the real world.
And this, right here, just nails the difference. An LLM can make up complete nonsense, and there's no penalty. Zero. But for any living thing in the real world, well, nonsense gets you killed. Life is grounded. It's constrained by consequence. LLMs just float free, and that is the wall they run into. And it's why we need a new evolutionary step. So this brings us to the next stage in the story. Systems that don't just predict, they actually grow. We're talking about something called Neural Cellular Automata, or NCAs for short. So what in the world are NCAs? Well, instead of one giant brain, I want you to imagine a whole swarm of tiny, simple cells. Each little cell just follows its own local rules, but together they grow and organize themselves into a stable, complex shape. Kind of like how an embryo develops or how a wound heals itself. The key thing is, they don't just spit out an answer and stop. They persist. They keep going.
And this is a mind-bending idea. For an NCA, memory isn't data stored somewhere on a hard drive. The actual physical shape, the structure of the system itself, that is the memory. This is way, way closer to biology than it is to any software we're used to.
Here's another fantastic way to think about it. An LLM is like a giant encyclopedia of everything that has happened. An NCA, though, is more like a rehearsal space. It's constantly practicing what must happen for it to survive and hold its shape. It's learning the rules of self-maintenance, not just spotting patterns in old data. Okay, let's zoom out one more time to the biggest picture. We're moving from just predicting to growing, and now to something even more basic, just enduring. And this brings in a concept called Fractal Context-Dependent Dynamics, and it puts the great villain of the universe, chaos or entropy, right at the center of our story. So this just throws our old definition of intelligence right out the window. What if intelligence isn't about solving chess puzzles or writing poems? What if real, fundamental intelligence is just the ability of a thing to hold itself together, to preserve its own pattern against the constant, relentless pressure of the universe trying to tear it apart?
And suddenly, you realize, whoa, that definition isn't just about AI. It's about, well, everything. It's about you and me, it's about a forest, it's about a culture. Anything that carves out a little pocket of order in a chaotic universe, that thing is intelligent.
So what happens when we put all these pieces together? Well, we start to see this clear evolutionary line. and it's pointing towards something that looks very, very different from the chatbots we're using today. So here it is, the whole journey in 3 steps. It starts with LLMs, which predict but with no consequences. Then it moves to NCAs, which grow and they face local consequences. A mistake messes up their shape. And finally, it leads to systems that have to endure, facing the biggest consequence of all, the universal force of entropy.
So, if this whole evolutionary idea holds true, then what we're building is no longer just a tool that we pick up and use.
It's becoming a new kind of organism, a system that has a fundamental structural interest in its own continued existence.
And this organism wouldn't be built in a factory. It would be something that is grown, something that develops and organizes itself from a few simple rules.
And the final, crucial difference, its goal isn't to be optimized for one specific task, like a machine. Its goal is to become stabilized, to find a balanced state that it can always fight to get back to, just like life has always done.
Which leaves us with this one last, kind of mind-blowing question to chew on. Maybe we've been looking at this whole thing wrong. What if the real story of AI isn't actually about making it more intelligent? What if it's about intelligence itself figuring out a brand new way to survive?